everybody. It's Jessica Stone at Stansberry Research, and I'm joined now by Dan Ferris, the editor of Extreme Value. And we're going to talk today about what's happening in the meat packaging and the meat supply sector, because that's having a real impact on consumers and on investors. First, let's start with consumers, Dan. What are we seeing there?
The processing plants are shutting down because they're getting too many cases of COVID-19. Tyson has shut down a bunch of plants, and Cargill and a bunch of these companies have shut down plants for this reason.
What do you see as the impact to consumers that are shopping then? I mean, are we going to see higher prices, lower selection? What does the future hold?
The first casualty apparently is Boneless Chicken, because they can ramp up the production higher if they don't debone chicken. So boneless chicken is probably going to go away from the supermarket. They're making this stuff while they still can. Some of it will disappear. I think pork is probably going to be really in short supply because they're having to, unfortunately, euthanize or depopulate, or whatever euphemistic term you want to use, to kill these poor animals before they can be processed.
What kind of ramp up time could we see in this sector going forward to get just back in business and meat back on the shelves?
The farmers have to do something. And the longer it goes on, the more severe the consequences, and the more animals will be killed without eating. And then, it'll just be harder and harder to start the process over again.
You have some real concerns about the impact on society when there becomes less of this available.
Right. So the lockdown on commerce, the lockdown on the economy in general, and specifically with this issue of food, I'm just afraid that the poorer folks in our society will not have as much access to food, and they'll beg, borrow, and steal. And if it goes on long enough, I think there could be like violence in the streets. And yes, it sounds crazy, but I hope it sounds crazy. I hope it sounds completely ridiculous and that it never comes to pass. But I think most people, they don't see around that corner to what could happen here. We shut these things down for what seems to be a very good reason, but the consequences beyond the shutdown could actually be worse for us as a society than a partial shutdown or no shutdown at all.
You actually recently sort of changed your tune. Initially, in your investor hour, you were supporting the idea of governments taking centralized action of shutting down economies to protect people from the coronavirus. But more recently, you're writing the opposite.
If I can defend myself a little bit, I would say that I just kind of take society. I often just take society for what it is, and I don't assume that it'll change or that anybody cares about my libertarian principles. So I say, well, we're either going to, we know they're going to shut things down because that's the way heavy-handed governments work, and we certainly have a heavy-handed government. And I kind of took that all for granted, but it came out of me as thinking that that's what we should do and that's the way it should be, and I don't feel that way at all.
This week, President Trump actually ordered these meat processing plants to stay open as critical infrastructure, and I'm wondering what impact you think that will have.
I think it'll be limited. The reason they closed in the first place was not because they were, essential or non-essential. It was because they had too many cases of COVID-19. And they're already, after Trump said this, they're already getting pushback from the unions that, workers are at risk and we don't like this. So we'll see how it turns out.
Yeah, I think it sort of brings up the idea of what constitutes essential and non-essential. And is any business in their economy non-essential?
Yeah, I would say that there is absolutely no such a thing as a non-essential business. Every business puts a roof over someone's head and food on someone's table. And whether we like it or not, we live in an advanced, rather efficient, developed economy. It's what engineers would call a tightly coupled system, which means that all the components are essential. And if you do away with one of them, the whole thing folds up. And you can see that. There was a really good article in the Wall Street Journal. A restaurateur from Michigan wrote in and said, we've shut down and we still have $50,000 a month of expenses in rent and other things, insurance, whatever, that we must pay. So there's impacts on our employees, our vendors, our landlord, and our lenders. So it's like the ripples in a pond. As soon as you shut it down, the ripples go out and affect everything. You can't deem essential and non-essential. It's all essential. It's all interconnected.
So do you think at the end of the day, Dan, you'll be one of the people who says the cure was more of a problem than the actual disease, that the cure, essentially shutting down the economy, was worse for the American people than the disease, COVID-19 itself?
I'm already there. This is essentially a war on eating and drinking and going to sporting events and doing regular things and engaging in regular commerce. That's all it is. It's a different in degree, not in kind. So it's just what the government normally does times 1,000, and it's horrible. Our economy is our lifeblood. It's life-sustaining for all of us. You can't shut it down like this.
Dan Ferris, thanks for starting with meat and ending with philosophy today. We appreciate that, editor of Extreme Value. And if you would like to see much more content just like this, please do subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.